Hello and welcome back once again to the top 12 movies I saw for 2014, and also followed by the bottom 12 movies I saw for 2014. So I say welcome back because I actually already shot this video, got it all uploaded and ready to start editing, and turns out there was no audio. So I fixed my audio problems, found out what the problem was, hopefully. And now I'm back to record the whole thing once again, so it's probably not going to be as good as it was before, or it may be better. You never know with me. So anyway, first of all, why am I wearing a hat indoors? Well, because I just woke up. My hair is a mess, as you can see. So yeah. Either that or you can say I'm trying to look like a douchebag, because douchebags wear beanies inside, right? Anyway, that and also when I wear my headphones, I don't get that weird headphone crease in my hair like some people do. So anyway, let's get on to the top 12 of this year. It was a hard list to pick out, but I managed to do it, so here it is, my top 12 for 2014. Oh, also one other thing, I'm not calling this the top 12 I saw in theaters this year, because some of the movies, since I didn't start watching movies again until mid-June, some of the movies that came out in 2014, the earlier part, I didn't actually see till they came out on DVD or Netflix. So I am still counting those as long as they came out this year and I got to see them. So this is just the top 12 movies that were released in 2014, in my opinion. Okay, so let's get on with the list. Okay, so the number 12 film on my list this year almost got beat out, very minusculely got beat out by the final movie I saw of the year, which was Interstellar, and that movie would be, the number 12 pick this year is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So you may be saying, wait a minute, Interstellar was a much better film than Spider-Man 2. Why did that win out? Well, let's put it this way. It was a very close call. I almost bumped Spider-Man 2 from the list in favor of Interstellar. But then when I sat down and thought about it, I was wondering, is Interstellar the one I'm liking more because it's more recently that I've seen it and it's still fresh in my mind, or is it actually a better movie? And as I went through it, I had to think that for a 3-hour movie, Interstellar really didn't tell a whole lot of a story. It was just kind of, the story was just oddly sparsed through this 3-hour mess of imagery and sound, or lack of sound. So that's why overall Interstellar lost out to The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, why did The Amazing Spider-Man 2 top all the other stuff that I've seen this year? Well, not fully top, but at least top the other stuff other than the 12 that are on this list. Because it's a comic book movie for one. Everyone loves comic book movies. But honestly, the fact that it's a comic book movie is probably why it ranks so low on this list, because honestly, I feel we're getting oversaturated with comic book movies, and I was starting to feel a little bit of burnout on comic book movies when I saw this. So, overall, I thought this one could have been better, but at the same time, it was better than a lot of the other stuff I saw this year that was just kind of or which you'll see later will be in the bottom list. I had quite a few in just the mid-range. But yeah, so out of those, other than the other top 11, Spider-Man 2 was the one that fit into the number 12 spot. Overall, I both like and dislike this version of Spider-Man. I didn't think we really needed the reboot. I think they could have just took what they already had established with the Tobey Maguire films, recast it if they weren't happy with Tobey Maguire's performance. You still could have had Andrew Garfield. Then you've already bypassed all the startup stuff that we had to see again in the first one. But at the same time, they wanted to introduce the Gwen Stacy character over the Mary Jane Watson character, so I did like that. I do like the combination of Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker. One thing I really did like about this movie was the ending, that they actually stuck true to the comic. Well, they took some liberties with how it happened, but the overall event that happened leading to Gwen Stacy's death, spoilers if you haven't seen it or read the comic that's like 80 years old now, But yeah, just the fact that they actually went ahead and did that and didn't try and keep her around for another movie actually impressed me with this one. I wasn't really big on Electro. The fact that we were finally away from the origin story again, I did like. And the fact that they're leading into the Sinister Six thing, I hope I got that right this time. Last time I think I called them the Furious Five. But the fact that we're leading into Sinister Six actually interests me quite a bit, because on the 90s animated series, that was one of the better story arcs, I think, is when Spider-Man fought the Sinister Six. So I'm interested in seeing where that goes and who else they get to play other characters. But yeah, so overall, that's kind of my take on Spider-Man 2 and why it ranks number 12 on my list this year. Okay, so the number 11 spot on my list this year goes to Kevin Smith's Tusk. Now, you may be saying, I watched that movie, it was kind of poorly done, whatever. It's a Kevin Smith film. Expect it. He does things on a shoestring budget. It's not going to look like the biggest Hollywood budget movie. And why is my microphone constantly moving? He does things on a shoestring budget. It's not going to be this huge, epic Hollywood blockbuster, explosions everywhere. That's not a Kevin Smith film. For what he did with it, I think he did great. I listened to the podcast prior to even hearing that it was going to be made into a movie, and I remember laughing endlessly at the overall concept. I did actually forget a lot of the podcast by the time I went into the movie, so as I was watching it, I was like, why did he take that route instead of doing something a little bit more traditional and, like what other movies would have done. And when you go back and listen to the podcast, you're like, oh, that's because that's the way they originally conceptualized it. So he sticks close to the podcast. He didn't alter very much from the script. The one thing I think did hurt the movie and why it's down at number 11 is the ending. Yes, it's exactly what they originally had in the podcast, because he actually plays the podcast during the credits, so you actually get to hear that it ended this way because that's the way we originally came up with. But at the same time, I think they could have did a more artistic ending or more traditional ending of the way you thought it was going to be, and it might have been a little bit stronger of a piece, or it might have been worse for it. You never know. But it was his decision, and he made it, and I think it worked out great. Definitely a step away from what we usually see from Kevin Smith with the Clerks films and things of that nature. And I'm definitely looking forward to the upcoming sequels for the, what's he calling, the True Canadian North trilogy. So those are coming out soon, hopefully. Plus he's got like Christmas movies and whatnot that he's trying to do, and this microphone's pissing me off, that he's going to start doing, and I'm just looking forward to all of it. I'm glad he's decided not to retire from filmmaking after all, at least not right now. Maybe somewhere down the line he will, but for now we still get more Kevin Smith, and I think it's something we deserve, and that's why Tusk is number 11 on my list of top movies I saw this year. Okay, so my number 10 movie for this year, and hopefully I've figured out the problem with this microphone moving around so much, because that was really starting to annoy me. My number 10 film for this year is If I Stay. Now, you may be saying, wow, you actually put that on your top 10 list? Yeah, that's kind of a chick flick. Well, that's the thing that actually won me out about it. For as much of it wasn't targeted towards my demographic, it was still a fairly decent film. The overall premise was enough to draw you in. The story behind it, just the overall concept. The only thing that was really a downfall at this movie and why it ranks so low on my top list this year would be the ending. I think if they would have just left an open cliffhanger of an ending, it would have been a lot stronger of a film. But they chose to let you know what her final decision was, and honestly, I think that kind of hurt the film in the long run. It would have been a lot more powerful piece, to me at least, if they had just left an open ending. But another thing that drew me into this film was just the overall love that the writer or director or whoever had for music. Just the overall concept. It's these rock and roll parents who have a classical musician daughter, and just overall the whole concept of it. Another downfall that it had to it, and another reason it ranks so low, is because it was written from a teenage standpoint, I guess, where boyfriend and girlfriend get mad at each other for what one's doing, but they're doing it because the other one caused it, and it's just that whole back and forth demographic between her and her boyfriend. But at the same time, the boyfriend character had to be there to make the movie as powerful as it was. But yeah, so overall, if you're a music lover, you can't dislike this film, and I love music, so I think that's really what tugged at me the most about it. And like I said, the only downfall to it, to me anyways, was the ending. And that's why it's ranked number 10 on my list of movies that I saw this year. Okay, the number 9 movie for this year is something we've all seen before, the love triangle film. Boy likes girl, girl likes other boy likes girl too, but girl may like first boy, so. But the reason I like this one the most is because it was an interesting twist, something that I hadn't seen before in this genre of film. So the movie in question is The Book of Love. It's not often you get to meet other cultures. To a degree you do with things like Disney's Frozen and whatnot kind of takes place, or Brave kind of takes place in old Scottish times. Frozen takes place in early times. How to Train Your Dragon takes place sort of in Viking times. So you get little bits of other culture, but not as much as I feel you got in The Book of Love, which takes you really deep into the Hispanic traditions of life and death, the Festival of the Dead, what their versions of the afterlife are, and things of that nature. You just really don't see that too much in films. And the fact that it's in a children's movie to help educate younger kids towards other cultures, I really liked. Plus, it was a fresh take, like I said, on a traditional story, which I think is what drew me into it the most. So yeah, really not much else to say about it. Other than that, it was just overall a good piece, and that's why it's ranked number 9 on my list of top movies I saw for 2014. Okay, so we're at the number 8 pick now, and my number 8 pick for this year goes to another animated children's film, and that would go to Box Trolls. Now, why did Box Trolls make it above The Book of Life? Well, because as much as Book of Life introduced a new culture to an old story, Box Trolls introduced just a whole new range of things to classical stories. Instead of, your villain having a common, a common theme for why he wants to rule the world or take over everything, usually because, he wants to marry the princess to become the king so he can rule the land, or things like that, just things we always see in films. In this one, the villain wanted a hat so he could join a cheese club. You just don't see things as off the wall as that. I do like the fact that they incorporated the cheese and the wearing of hats to incorporate different social levels, like the box trolls being what would be considered lower class, the homeless, whatever. Then you have your middle class, which would be the villain and everyone else, and then you have your upper class, which is the hat-wearing cheese eaters, and it was just overall a fresh take on, again, kind of common stories, but something that I just hadn't seen before. And, being a huge fan of claymation, the fact that it was actually claymation and not done with CGI like The Book of Life was, which somebody said that was partially stop motion, partially CGI. So, but Box Trolls was definitely stop motion animation with, because it even, another part that I really liked about it that really sold me on it was the little bit at the end where they actually break the fourth wall and step back, and you can see the film being animated in high speed to create this one little scene. That really put it over Book of Life for me, so that is why Box Trolls ranks in at number 8 on my top list of movies that I saw this year. Okay, so we're up to the number 7 pick now, and my number 7 pick for the top movies I saw in 2014 goes to Edge of Tomorrow. Now, I had to really debate long and hard about if this movie actually ranked into my top films and where in my top films it would go. Honestly, like, I weighed this against so many other films just to be on the top 12, and it won out every time. I don't know quite why. I still don't understand. Just something about the movie really impressed me enough to bypass a lot of other films. Ranking at number 7 on the list came as even more of a challenge, because I was like, well, I know it'll rank on the top 12, but what number should it be? Should it be 12? Should it be, where is it at in the pantheon of top movies? And overall, after long debate over a lot of things, I ended up putting it here at number 7. So what's so good about Edge of Tomorrow? Basically, just the fact that they take a concept we've had before and put a whole new twist on it. Again, kind of like, why Book of Life and Box Trolls were here. This one, just, I feel they could open up a whole new genre with. So they take basically the concept of reliving the same day, which we've seen in things like Bill Murray's Groundhog Day, and they put it into an action film. And just, the overall concept of reliving the same day in different environments intrigues me. Imagine if they took the concept of living the same day over and over again and put it into a horror film, which I guess Groundhog Day could be considered a comedic horror, but not really, because after a while he did go insane. But yeah, it's just, taking it and putting it into different concepts interests me for some reason. I guess you could say it also relate back to movies like The Time Machine, where he goes back in time to try and stop his fiancée from getting killed, and each time he watches her die a different way. But again, that's explained in that movie, so that's also a good movie, even though it got shunned a lot. Go watch it. It's actually a pretty decent film, especially if you like the original one from the 60s, which I loved. But Edge of Tomorrow, I just think, it was a fresh spin on an old concept, and the old concept isn't a concept we see done very often, and I think there's a lot of room for doing more of it in the future, but I don't want it to be where we get overabundance of it, if you know what I mean. So that's why I'm not really making a big case for this. It's just the movie I liked, and I'm sticking it at number 7. Deal with it. So that's why Edge of Tomorrow is number 7 on my list.